Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, not what you don't.
Yes, it's another
Good morning.
Tony Caravan live and in color. On the side of the screen, apart from my mug, you can see, I'm going to try to enlarge this. We're still dealing with this crazy. There we go. This image doesn't do that girl justice. So I'm going to try to up the exposure, maybe in the shadows and stuff a little bit, and see if we can get. Anyway, this is the AI replica that I was dealing with. I was using in my experiment. That's that you can do too, basically, and just to show you, these avatars that they create are very interesting, and so people, you can't see the caption coming out of her, but it's like, how are you feeling? And the language on their page is an AI companion who cares, always here to listen and talk, always on your side, join the millions growing their new AI friends, create your replica. And like I say, this is an experiment, more of an experiment with them, and I guess perhaps a way of funding some of their research. But apart from that, it's obvious, it's clearly, it's a venture that, this company is undertaken. Try to get my headphones set up right. Anyway, glad to see you on another day, but
Let's get this show on the road.
I was interested in the weather here, broadcasting live in the Mid-Atlantic states and the former United States of America. It's 18 degrees outside and looks like it's going to get up to a high of 48 degrees. And this week in this swath, this geographical location, northern middle tier of the former US of A, we're looking at temperatures in the 50s and just breaking 60, and overnight above freezing, and perhaps on a couple nights staying over 50. So like Wednesday and Thursday in a lot of parts of this country are going to actually feel like it's, people will have what's called spring fever. That's, and they'll be out there with their shorts and whatever. And then that's when people usually catch their cold. And so there'll be a spike in the so-called flu. And for those just tuning in for the first time, yeah, I drink these. I'm not sponsored by any particular brand of soft drink. I probably shouldn't even be drinking soft drinks. But it's 5:02 in the morning. The show starts at around 5 o'clock. Seems lately anyway. 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's late morning over in the UK. And a couple of hits of that with the previous cold splashes of water on the face, and I'm ready to go. So anyway, today's color handkerchief is red. Get that soda off the mustache. It's a live show. It's kind of a tracking my life, but it's been an interesting life, to say the least. So
presenting the world's greatest everything.
That's used to be the beginning of my show. So let's get into it.
Good morning.
Excuse me. So yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go with this slide thing that we started to do yesterday. I don't have, this is an open source code YouTube Live, and we've talked about that before, so we're not gonna waste much time on it. It's very limited. In other words, what you see is what you get. Me adding the TV here is just giving us a little a chance for me to go through some images that I have, and in that way, I could bring you things that are points of departure for discussion. And so, for example, and right now, what I'm doing is this overhang here is, in fact, I'm going to push myself off to the right. I'm actually going to shrink myself down. I hadn't thought about that before. I don't think that would affect the size or quality of the broadcast. I never thought about that really. The size of the screen, if the size of the screen is going to affect the resolution of the broadcast. It's a possibility. It is a distinct possibility. Knowing how these coders these days, I won't be able to basically see the chat if I do it this way. But what will work better for you is that you will be able to better see what's going on as far as the images are concerned. So if I take back the color, what we're looking at here is an onion. And it's very hard each image, when you're dealing with a television monitor that's not necessarily meant to be a computer monitor, and then having it be projected through this amount of space, there's a good distance here of, say, almost 4 feet. It's hard to guarantee. Sorry for the slow start. I'm just trying to get this thing set up right. Excuse me. It's hard to, each image seems to almost have to change. On the card today, you have a picture of yours truly, who basically looks a little bit different every time I'm on the air, and I really can't really tell why that is necessarily. It just is, maybe it's the lighting, and maybe I don't even need as much lighting as I have now. See, this computer controls that light that just came on. That's the computer that controls this. So it gives me the ability to have live interject sound effects, or as I wish, music. Then the television is being projected over Wi-Fi, using an Apple TV, because I have an Apple Get Up here. And so I'm basically, simulcasting onto the TV through an old Apple TV. Used to call it the like hockey puck type of thing. And so that's the mechanics of how all of this is working. And so I'm just trying to get into the show. I just woke up a little while ago. And so bear with me till I get my bearings straight here. And I guess this little controller won't matter if it's down towards the bottom here. You can still see what's going on. And I can still see what's going on. That's the main point. If I seem like I'm looking in the wrong direction, it's because if I pull this over, I could pull that over a little bit. I don't have the ability, the way this is set up, to monitor. It's a human thing, and we've talked about this before. Like, unless I would set up, I almost should start this show over, but I'm not going to. It's a typical thing. This gives you a bigger picture of the room. You can see everything. How everything's set up, so you can see the TV. You can almost see the hockey puck on the other side. And that's done through a device that I've explained a couple of times before if we get enough light on it. It's a lens, okay, that are designed to clip onto like a smartphone's camera. And what it allows you to do, you can get fisheye lenses or telephoto lenses or wide angle lenses. I mean, look at this ridiculous thing. That's a telephoto lens for a smartphone. Do you imagine that? And you can find these things on the internet, anywhere, and they just, and you could swap them out fairly easy. But what I wanted to talk about today is the same old stuff, but I wanted to clarify a couple of things and maybe some things I started to cover. As always, I could complete. Here's an example of another lens. It's a little show and tell. This would be a fisheye lens. I have to be careful with this thing because it wants to. They're made for phones, not for tops of cameras. So if you look, you see where my finger's pointing right there. Well, actually, right down there. You see that white light, right at the tip of my finger here? That's the hockey puck. That's the Apple TV. And you see I've got a light over there that's lighting up the room. And then this TV is just connected to a bookshelf. It's amazing how those lenses work, and then this is just a printer and an odd shade I have on it. This is a front window that actually leads to the street. And this is a 100-year-old house. And when I bought it, there was this weird old-fashioned shade with things on it. I got rid of just about everything, but I kept that there. Though it's really no longer necessary because I put a plywood board. Luckily, when wood was cheap, still cheap. Now buying wood is like is as bad as buying toilet paper. They've upped the price. A 2x4 that used to cost $1 or something, a couple bucks, is now like $14 or something. It's ridiculous like that. But anyway, so if I'm looking this side, you get this side view of this. It makes your face look like it's elongated. And that's this thing. And weird, but that's just my own personal vanity. Night and day you torture me. I wonder if I get a strike for that. Some song from the 40s or 50s or something like that. But what I'm talking about is the reason I have this onion in view is the idea that of peeling away at the onion. And most people today, they see is the skin, the outer level of the onion. And when these so-called conspiracy theorists do their videos, like when I first log on, I have to log on to YouTube first before I could begin this. And the first thing you see are all these websites, are these YouTubers that get like 100,000, close to 200,000 views, or at the very least in the high tens of thousands. The hardest video I ever made. Tragedy struck. Right. And they've got these faces, right, to go with it. Posers posing. And it's either that, or then it's the show offs that I've talked about before. We just bought another thing, skid steer. We just got a new boat, an airplane. And, these people are making ridiculous amounts of money, hundreds of thousands, and of course the guys who hit the million hits, they make $1 million. Some of these people became, they're YouTube millionaires. And they just put these things out and they have all these fans. And that's, like I say, it's that brings in this cult of personality idea, because it's not limited to politics, the cult of personality. It's as if there's become this, it's not as if it hasn't always been there. If humans always haven't had this somehow built in thing in the brain, in the biological brain, not those with higher consciousness, in other words, people that actually have consciousness, and that's that hard problem of consciousness that I speak about in my book Codex, which is now so far fading into the background that I'll bring it to the fore. Codex is the book I push all the time. It's my most recent book. It's fair to say it's my latest book, but and and that book basically, gives you a good overview of this kind of stuff. Get comfortable here. I'm trying to get my head at an angle so it's not distorted for you, and a little bit of stiff neck too, because I'm forcing myself to look the other way. And it's almost like a lot of people aren't really conscious. They're, in the old days, so to speak, people used to talk about, the reptilian brain. And that's not like a David Icke thing talking about reptilians, aliens or anything. Though this is about the idea that, in Darwinian theory, and again, I don't subscribe to, his theory, because there's just too many holes in it. It's a hypothesis. At best, it's a loose hypothesis. But the idea of, there are certain biological facts, from a surgeon's standpoint, the anatomy of the human being, human animal, that, you have at the basic foundation core is what they call the reptilian brain. And then, and then they talk about how, where you get up to the monkey brain, so to speak, the ape brain. And of course, where we are now, and then what people like me and many others believe, and then higher consciousness, which is the ability to that takes us to a whole new level, literally. But what advertising and propaganda appeals to are the most primitive biological functions of the human brain. So, you would say, the idea of fight or flight, basic needs. I don't know if you can hear, but there's like a road rally going on as usual. It might be the day. It's Monday morning. So I guess Monday morning, everyone seems to, be on a road rally to go up the road. I don't really know why or what's up there. Why you would live where I live and commute up to there, or why the next city over, anybody up there would want to commute down to here. That's, to me, I'm an empathetic person. So I feel for people. For the better part of my life, I managed to avoid avoid the 9 to 5, 8 to 4 or whatever. And the times that I did, and I did, I worked, I usually enjoyed, for the most part, unless I was hungover or something like that, I usually enjoyed, for the most part, going to work. And as you could see, I'm up at 5 o'clock. I've always been pretty much an early riser, unless I was completely hungover or something crazy like that. But getting back to the this idea of consciousness, which I do, like I say again, I deal with in my book, and it's a wake up call. It's not a very long read. It's not a complicated read, and rather than put a lot of if you read my earlier books, like I said, I've got 10 books that I've put out. If you read some of my earlier works, some are more autobiographical. There's all my books basically contain copies of my beat poetry lyrics. Even this one, I think, has the two things. Because I figure I'm publishing a book, I might as well put in a page or two of lyrics of songs that I had written. Though I've wound down my productivity of writing songs. I've written about 50, something around 50 songs, 50 beat poetry tracks. And I just got my notification, YouTube. Tony Caravan, the second most interesting man in the world. I had to use a weird abbreviation. TC Live was voted #1 on Earth 3 weeks in a row. There's an old picture of me. It's not that old, actually. It's in my basement bar at this place I had 2 living quarters alone. And this building that I'm in this picture in, was such a great place. I leased it out to somebody. It was lease purchase, and the guy turned out to be a hoarder, and he just totally destroyed the place. The building ended up, I could have sold the building for, I don't know, $150,000, $100-some thousand dollars 10 years ago. It just sold 2 weeks ago for $7,000. I mean, it sold for a little bit more, but I mean, that was the net after the real estate agent's commission and, and paying part of the settlement fees and stuff like that. Because of this buffoon who's just walking around freely, Oh, and in the basement of there, part of my deal in giving this guy, because I was lease purchasing deal, so it was like he didn't really outright own the building until he made his last payment. So part of my deal was I had a storage space in the basement where I was stored all of my things in anticipation of eventually buying a house, which is what I did. I bought this house about 5 or 6 years ago. And when I tried to get in there to get my stuff, it was he was such a hoarder. He was keeping his garbage in the basement. He was just throwing his garbage bags in the basement. The place was infested. It was humid. All my stuff had been like rifled through, and he had cats that he wasn't taking care of. And you needed a gas mask, put it this way, to go in there. So I lost all of my clothing that I had stored, like my winter clothing and special clothing like that. Things that some of these explorers had gotten for me because they had sponsors like the North Face. So things like North Face jackets I was gifted, destroyed. Computer information, some film reels of film footage that I took that obviously can't be replaced because it was on film, destroyed. Everything. And that and you just learn at that point that you have to detach yourself from involvement with material things. You come in this world naked and you go out, with, you can't take it with you. So But I don't know how exactly I got into that. But that guy for sure was a person who was thinking with his, lizard brain, reptilian brain, or monkey brain, whatever. So, you know, yeah, this show's starting off a little bit very slow and very kind of weird, depressing. But I want to get back to this peeling off the onion and consciousness, because it's the key to understanding society right now. And it's like what I was talking about is this, how this cult of personality seems to have been programmed into our basic primitive brains. And whether that has something to do with, and like I say, if you watch this thing, or if you're a YouTuber, you have to have an open mind. If you're some political hack and you watch something like this, and you're expecting, it's the idea, if you go to work every day with a suit and a tie on, the uniform of conformity, as I call it, then this, you look at this and you look at a guy like me, and and it drives you nuts. So you just think, oh, he's an idiot. But you haven't done anything like I've done. I've been responsible for like breakthroughs in technology and ideas, that have affected, the course of human existence. I've been at key places and all that stuff. I'm not going to get on tout on a horn autobiographical. Buy my books if you want to read and learn about me. But yeah, I'm one of the most influential people, out there. And yeah, I say the second most interesting man in the world, because the first one was a part of an ad campaign, and I don't want to get into some copyright dispute with some beer company. You know what I'm talking about. So the idea is that in order to peel away at the onion, so to speak, is some people, they think they've accomplished something by pulling off the first couple layers. Hey, look, I see how it works. It's like the bureaucrats and the people who work for the intel agencies and stuff. They think they really think they know what's going on. It's like big data and big tech. They really think they have a handle on it, but they don't. They don't really. They're like a quarter through the onion, and they're patting themselves on the back and, having parties on their yachts and all that stuff. And I've done all that stuff, and I've been around the world, and I've been had a chateau, in Malibu. I've had a penthouse in New York City. I've had a townhouse in Capitol Hill. Yeah, that's right. I've done all that stuff. All right. I've run media, been involved in Hollywood, right? I've done all that stuff, I've had breakthroughs in technology, tech things that people today still haven't been able to duplicate. And people who became billionaires were using things that were breakthroughs I made. All right. But I don't care about any of that stuff. I live in a $15,000 house, and I had some buffoon basically take away half my life because he was a hoarder, and let cats and animals and whatever, lived in squalor and destroyed my stuff. And I was off busy publishing a magazine in another town, thinking my life's, possessions were safe. So, yeah, I don't care about that. I don't. And the idea of conscious, so you have these people out there that just don't. I'm talking back further from the microphone now, because yesterday I was hearing that thing that had happened before, which was at certain times, as if when it was reaching, seemed like it was peaking, there would be like a, some sort of, I don't know what you would call it. It wasn't like a popping. It was just, I don't know. They don't make microphone. This is an fairly expensive microphone because, it's got like a preamp built in and all that stuff, or a separate preamp, I should say. Excuse me. But yeah, I've given up on all that stuff. I used to be a character, player, like the movie The Player, starting to look like a Star Wars, that one weird Star Wars general character with this hat and these headphones on. Yeah, I got vanity, because, in the old days, I used to be a player and a looker and all that stuff. Now I'm older and I don't know. I guess I'm tired this morning and, thinking about that building selling. I just learned about that yesterday. Because basically I gave the realtor, was given free, free to do whatever they wanted to do, So yeah, I lost all that stuff. And sometimes it eats at you. But you've got this brain. And so, how did the corporatocracy take over? Right? How did we get to the place where we are right now? When I say these former United States of America, the disunited states of America, the idea that there are irreconcilable differences, which means that no matter what these people who believe in the cult of personality and who have somehow been mesmerized and the glamour, as in witchcraft. Everyone's seen that movie, The Craft. I think they made it twice, or have seen some kind of movie about that, and they call it the glamour, right? Well, that's what TV is, and that's what this is, the Black Mirror, the glamour, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, And so people have just fall for that. And those in charge, remember, I was a creative director in advertising. All right. And have been involved in these kinds of things, manage talent and produce things. So I know all about the idea of manipulation for the sake of, of selling products. Right. And that's one of the reasons. And I used to always hate that about that business. And my idea was to be, I was one of the guys who spearheaded more of the more honest approach to in advertising, an idea of, more of supply and demand type of idea, and it's kind of the same with what I do with this. I could bring up another one of these things. Oh, I see. I didn't open them. I wasn't prepared for this show the way I should have been. So forgive me on that as well. But when I talk about on this thing on my other site, which I'll bury this stuff, but I just want to make a point here. It's not like I'm trying to sell you something. And I don't know if I darken off on this one, if that's going to darken every other one that's up or not. I'm not sure. But I have this site, Great Solar Stuff, and we consider that a sponsor. right? But this plays into my concept of advertising media. All this is going to make sense. And, I'm already 34 minutes and 58 seconds into this show, and it's just starting to gel. And, I realized that it turns off in that first 15 minutes to a half hour. A lot of people are turned off because, but this is live, and and I have to, the way my brain functions is I have to get into it, and then I make it an effort to tie everything together. So, it always comes complete circle. And if there's something I missed today, tomorrow I will like bring it up and put it on the screen here, But this, like, for example, this is a site I've had for 20 years, Great Solar Stuff, at least something like that. And I always say, it's like, I'm against the Green New Deal because the Green New Deal is a lie. That's one of those Patriot Act type of ideas, World Economic Forum, and like I said, I've got an answer. I've got visuals for all this thing. Let's see if I pull this up, because that's another important image that I did find today. Here we go. And of course, that's the Chinese communist leader, obviously speaking at the World Economic Forum this year. All right. It's just like the WHO, this character, was allowed to get away with, releasing all these people throughout the world, and having the WHO, World Health Organization, another thing I talked about yesterday, using words like world health, and people thinking, oh, World Health Organization, they must be, doing good for world health, or World Economic Forum, they must be really trying to, do good for the world's economies. But just like the Green New Deal, is trying to blame CO2 on all the problems of the world, when CO2 is the thing that makes a thing green. And the World Health Organization covered for Xi here, the Chinese communists, all right, where when they were sending planes out around the world spreading this Wuhan virus. But to get back to this, so I'm not against so-called green energy, because, well, first of all, it's not green energy. I'm not against alternative energy, but it's not necessarily alternative energy. Solar power has been around forever. Not forever, but it's been around for a long time. I use a solar panel on my backyard, and I'll demonstrate that when the weather changes in the coming months. I have a mini greenhouse that's kind of the size of the TARDIS, the outside of the TARDIS. If you don't know what the TARDIS is, well, you should. It's a piece of pop culture, and I'm a pop culture guy, Pop culture is very important. Politics isn't pop culture, but they've replaced pop culture with politics now. That's all it is. And so you've got the glamour of the media and the glamour of politics. And like I say, it's like Mesmer was a guy, that, that basically mesmerized, was a guy, that term comes from the idea of like, more or less, like hypnotizing people. This idea of controlling the primitive brain. Get back to that idea of the reptilian, biological reptilian brain, monkey brain, so to speak. That's not really the monkey brain, it's what people would, anthropologists would refer to more as, the ape, the hominid, whatever. Homo erectus, And so there's no use of consciousness the idea is to I have there's two schools of thought on this that I present, and I presented them in my books, various books. I don't know if I even do it particularly in this one. The idea, and I have a song, talking where there's a lyric in there, something about the soulless millions. Because no matter how you want to equate this stuff, biologically, look at the brain as a bioelectric calculating, computer device or something like that. That if from a religious standpoint, a theologian's point of view, consciousness would be the soul, right? From, in metaphysics, those that believe in NDEs, near-death experiences, people who experience astral projection, which I have to admit, when many years ago, over 30 years ago, when I was involved in, because I've always, wanted to know, and I've always explored different things in life, that I was able to get involved in. I was able to astral project. I can't seem to do that anymore, though. I've tried tried a lot, but I don't know. Maybe I just didn't try hard enough. Or some people believe this thing, the pineal gland is your contact, your way of contacting to a larger consciousness, so to speak. And that through things like this, like caffeine, colas, processed foods, and various other things we do, that gland gets calcified. And the thing about it is that's your third eye, if you're not familiar with the pineal gland. That's kind of what even the ancients seem to have been aware of it, how no one can, really relate to, other than my theory that there were previous civilizations going back, tens of thousands of years, if not a million years. And that these periodic 12,000 near extinction events, the previous civilizations, all that are left are some sort of ruins or myths, what we call mythology, because they're just remnants of things that were passed down or, orally transmitted to somebody who, somehow chronicled them down and created some kind of language where there was a writing, where there was no writing, and symbology and all that kind of stuff. But whatever you believe, however you want to, whatever it is, whether you believe in, a soul, that you are part of a one, there's something called the law of one, it's interesting stuff, but, things that just appear and, and are found on the web, you have to have some skepticism on that stuff. But there's some interesting, it's interesting writings, and it's interesting ideas. So, so at the very least, it's poetic, and you can sometimes find, anyone who's doing something that's trying to give good advice that's not negative or cult-like, I'm open to at least, hearing it out. The law of one is one of those things that is most prominent with service to others as opposed to service to self. So what could be wrong with that? And that seems to be a universal thing, even found in religion. But whatever consciousness is, there are some hard, scientists that still try to explain, that consciousness is something produced by the human brain. And so it's, it's not a separate thing, the idea that we think in the first person, they try to just brush that aside and, and say, well, no, it's created, but it's called the hard problem of consciousness. That term's been coined by this guy Chalmers. I referred to him, I think, in my opening paragraph of this book, Codex, which I recommend everybody get. And so when you have this, so you look at the media, which is part of the corporatocracy, which now rules the world. Okay, that's what we live in. We live in a corporatocracy. The corporatocracy, big tech is part of the corporatocracy. All right. Big tech obviously controls big data, and everything else. And the media is part of the corporatocracy. These are all, the billion-dollar corporations, the multi-billionaires, the people who meet at Davos, the World Economic Forum. All right, those trying and success implementing the Great Reset. Controlling the masses. And part of that is they play off of the primitive brain. In other words, the purely bioelectrical brain. That's why when I look at guys these so-called neural scientists, or even like what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink, and these people working at Alphabet and Google on these deep mind projects, and Ray Kurzweil and all these guys, right? And I see them, I don't elevate them as being, as coming up with some kind of incredible breakthroughs or anything like that. In my mind, maybe this is too much light on this side. Just hide that for a second. It feels a little bit better in the eyes anyway. But I don't, to me, I see them as lacking. So, someone says, well, Musk is a great engineer, a brilliant man and all this kind of stuff. But I see them as closed-minded. I see them as, going back to, The Onion. All right. I see them as I don't think they've peeled the onion down too far. But what I was trying to explain, and I just wanted to get this out of the way, because, I want to complete thoughts. And I'm throwing a lot of stuff out here, but I don't want to leave you hanging. And I know sometimes I do. I don't want to have to come back tomorrow and finish the thought. When I came up with great solar stuff, my idea was I actually bought one of these things. Okay, this is a device. Obviously, you could see the top of it's like a handle. All right, and you could go to this thing and basically, just plug something into it, whether it's just a standard plug from an appliance in your house, or USB, plug a USB thing into it. And the thing is, I bought one, like 10 years ago, before anybody even knew that kind of thing existed. And the idea is that, and I was able to use it when there were power failures. I didn't even have a solar panel on it at the time. What I like about that, you can get a solar panel and connect it direct to a solar panel and charge it with a solar panel. So in a situation like they had in Texas, last month, where the power was completely out. See, normally those things usually come with an AC adapter or an auto adapter. So you could charge it from your car. You could actually jump your battery. With the one I had, you could use to jump your battery if you're in your vehicle, if your vehicle was down. But you could charge it from your battery, from your car battery. You could have it plugged in all the time in your house with an AC adapter, so that if the power ever went out, I think, like a thing goes off, like a, bang or something, the power's out, which if you have any of those, other, protective devices for your computer, you plug in USP, what do they call those? It's like UPS almost, like it's something like that. They're power backups, but they only last for like 5 minutes at best or something. I used to have one of those, but it's enough time for you to safely turn down your computers, and so you don't get a power surge or something damage your equipment. Those were big, and they were big in the 90s. I remember everybody had those backup things, but they were only good for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Unless you spent a fortune, you might get a half hour out of one of them. But this thing you could get a day out of, and depending on how you use it, you can get several days out of it. If you're just using it to charge your cell phone or charge your laptop or turn on a television, because remember, our appliances today, I've talked about this before. One of the big faults about these liars, the people who lie about the Green New Deal and energy and make it a crisis and all that kind of stuff, climate crisis and stuff. They have no idea of how efficient and clean we've become here in the US of A, or the former US of A, over the past several decades. Because it's like these people who are protesting in the street. They're reading old radical handbooks on how to protest and anti-government type of things, books that were written in the late 50s or 60s, right? I mean, these are 60-year-old books. And it's the same with this climate, these people involved in the climate stuff. They've read those books too, because they're out there with their little cardboard signs, magic marker, I want this, I want that, exercising futility, as my shirt, over here says behind me. See if I can move it. You see that? It says, then what? ? That's my answer to them. Then what? But they have no idea of, that we have, this one has, everything has that little blue sticker on it. I peel them off because it's just the way I am. But here's one. It's, just bear with me here. I got so many wires. I don't want to knock everything over. Energy. I'm half blind. I don't know. It's some kind of energy saver, energy thing. It's the word energy. You see the word energy with some kind of logo. It's a little square thing. It's usually in a blue sticker. On my printer, it's actually printed right on it in white. And it's the same as with our manufacturing plants and our energy plants. We have filters and all sorts of we've cleaned up. I'm old enough to know of the days of pollution, the old commercial with the crying Indian, Native American. But like I said, most of the Indians I've met, referred to themselves as Indians. Okay. And, I respect them, what they want to be called. It's just like, most Black people I've known have always referred, if they referred to themselves in any way other than just as a guy or a girl, they would prefer to just be called a Black as opposed to African American, right? And this is like, again, there's another thing with these SJW, these people, they just don't understand. So, but personally, yeah. There used to be a commercial with the crying Indian guy on the boat because he was paddling down the river and all he saw was pollution. And I can remember as a kid seeing, driving with my parents and seeing on the roadside litter. And there used to be a commercial, like commercials used to have jingles. Please, please don't be a litter bug. Please, please don't be a litter bug. Used to be on children's programs, And the idea is, that all, America went through its stage, when we started to have the disposable society began. All right. there was a stage where people were just throwing, it's like the Smokey the Bear thing in forest fires. People just throwing cigarettes out, throwing their soda cans, throwing their fast food wrapper, out the window of their car and driving on. Factories were located next to a river or a stream or something like that. Excuse me. They needed water to do something, and they would dump their water. The water would turn like purple or something, and kill fish and all that stuff. And, and energy was, smokestacks, the whole smokestack industry, just putting up brown, dirty smoke into the atmosphere. And in the big cities, we used to have something that was called smog. They still have that in places like Beijing and stuff. They're not doing anything about it. And you don't see that Greta or the New World Economic Forum going after them. Instead, all right, they got, they've got this joker as a speaker. This guy's China is the biggest threat to civilization that there is. But what America did over the past 50 or 60 years is we cleaned up our act for the most part. I mean, there's still, places and the very places that pretend that they're like, that are promote this, places like New York, New Jersey, and California, they're the places that are some of the biggest polluters there are, because they're the ones that are dumping their trash into the Atlantic and Pacific respectively, and just slapping, the people on the wrist. They're the ones doing it. That's what I'm saying. It's the hypocrisy of this is just is beyond on the average person's monkey brain. So yeah, we've gone way beyond that, and people forget that. So we have fairly clean energy in the U.S. already, and whether you believe in what so-called fossil fuels or whatever, the idea is that there's nothing you can do to deal with. Let me see how that looks. I think you can kind of get the point on here. Let me just try to, if I move this over a little bit. Yeah. But this is a good example. Here's two giant trucks. And I don't know if you could see my mouse thing. No, you can't. But you see there's some, and there's also some piece of heavy equipment that's like dumping something into the front truck. And these trucks are huge. Okay. Let's just enlarge a little. Let's get the scale of this across to people. So there's a prime example. This is why we need fossil fuels. Apart from the fact that they're heating, that we have a country that the earth is actually cooling, it's not heating up. And that climate change, global warming is a lie. Al Gore lied. John Kerry's like a big fat liar with a bunch of Botox in his face and had a facelift. He looks like a clown. What you see here are heavy, giant trucks and heavy equipment that requires things like diesel, all right, fossil fuels, which are basically organic. They come out of the ground. It's like I talked before about like the La Brea tar pits in LA and stuff. It's basically, it's organic. It comes out of the earth. So-called crude oil is basically or as organic as you can get. And CO2 is, 0.004% of our atmosphere, but yet it is it's the thing that greens our planet. Without it, trees won't grow, crop yields will be greatly reduced, and none of those things will produce the oxygen we and the other animals need to survive and live. And so they've picked a boogeyman that's that's just another one of their con games. It's the glamour, of the media, as in a witchcraft, the glamour by putting this thing before your eyes. And so this is how you fix infrastructure. This is how you deal with emergency situations. If there's an earthquake or a tornado or a hurricane, or even just bad storms, even just normal every winter snowstorms, you need trucks and plows, clear roads and houses, move down trees and stuff. You don't do that with battery powered vehicles. The size, the size of these things is just, a man, I put a finger here, or like this, a man on these things. These are like ukes. That's what we used to call them when this isn't just a dump truck. This is what you call a uke. In other words, you can't see, but there's like multiple steps to get into the cab here. It's not just one step up and you're in the cab. There's multiple steps. The average person only comes up to about here on this truck. These are giant vehicles. And that's our civilization. We're a carbon-based civilization. And people just won't accept that. And I'm saying, this is reality. You see this in every town, borough, small community in America. Somebody's using some kind of heavy equipment to do a job that's necessary for that community to function. Whether it's demolishing an old house or a house, or fixing a road, or repairing a bridge, whether it's new construction or demolition, or, like I say, or maintenance or repair. And people just don't want to accept that. But it's right before their eyes, and that's what the glamour does, is because what the glamour is like with politicians and this cult of personality, is that the glamour puts before people's eyes, and they use these magic words, I was listening to some guy one time who was explaining about the power of words and how even the word spelling, right, is basically rooted in the idea, the concept of the words of us casting a spell, right? Spelling, spell. And so, a guy like me who's been involved in advertising and human behavior and marketing and this kind of thing my whole life, and studied this and promotional efforts and things like that, because in the early years I was doing it and studying it and doing it for business, for the results. And it just took time when you sit back and you realize, and you really get into the intricacies of it, that you realize what's really going on there. And so the best way to describe this, these spells they put on people, this glamour, this witchcraft, which is the media and politicians and the cult of personality, the cult of personality. And it doesn't matter, sometimes the person who's, is the cult person it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Okay? That's another important aspect that people need to realize. It's the idea of raising someone to cult status. Many times those individuals, then it goes to their head and then they become, worse or do things. Because, it's the old classic thing. These old adages are true. Power corrupts, right? And you know, you just have to keep that. You know, they used to call them wives' tales. Of course, that wouldn't be old wives' tales. Things like that. That's not politically correct today because I don't, you know. But who cares? They're just words. So when you peel away at the onion, you know, we get back to that, and you realize that these people are using the glamour on you, you know, in this cult of personality. It's basically mind control. But, you know, it's not, you know, so much in a sense of, you know, where people want to have some woo, 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 you know, MK Ultra, CIA. Yeah, well, that's all true, by the way. But I mean, it's, you know, you don't have to get in. It's not like, that's not what I'm talking about. This stuff is so in your face, but it's the glamour that's not letting you see the, you know, you're not getting into the layers, peeling away at the layers of the onion. You're only seeing the surface, or someone is trying to deceive you by saying, hey, look, we peeled away something. Here's what it's really like. And that's what a lot of these cult, you know, heroes do, is they're pretend like, hey, we're going to expose the deep state, or we're going to, you know, make, you know, this, that, the other. I saw, you know, something on YouTube, you know, was it Biden or somebody was saying, I told you help is on the way, or something like that. And I'm going like, what are you talking about? You know, the United States is basically, you know, a disunited country, you know, with irreconcilable differences. So you're going to send 1,400. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the money. But remember, he wasn't the guy who promised that. The last guy, I don't want to get into names and politics, but the last guy said that before the election, said give the people $2,000. And, you know, the first original bill has been sitting in the House and Congress since last summer. You know, we've been waiting for this. So it's funny, the game. See, that's part of the glamour. That's part of the whole mesmerizing. That's part of the whole cult of personality that they play on you. And people just fall for it because they're using their reptilian brain, their monkey brain, you know, just for the sake of, you know, colloquialisms and pop cultural references. All right. You know, I don't know if I could open it up, you know, doing search on this, like I said, on these Mac computers is ridiculous, but I have this picture of this monkey. Let's see if I could find it. Search. When you put something in a Mac, a new Mac, a recent Mac, this isn't new, but a recent Mac, and new monkeys of the purse. Here we go. And so this was a meme I created back when I was doing memes. When I look around today, all I see are a bunch of drunk monkeys hooked on political news, smartphones, and the cult of personality, Tony C. And I don't know. Let's see, because this should open up to the same spot. See if it does. I'm curious just to give you an idea. See if it opened to the spot. Drunk monkey. Let's see. That was January in 2018. All right. I don't know if you could see there, but if there's some glare up there, but if you look at the top of his brain, I have his brain kind of exposed. But yeah, so this is me, you know, this is 2021, right? So this is 3 years ago. Me saying, I look around, I see a bunch of drunk monkeys hooked on political news, smartphones, and the cult of personality. You know, it's a surprise to me to see that. You know, I knew I had a picture of a graphic I made of a monkey, you know, drinking a bottle, but I had no idea that I was basically. So it's like, you know, I've been awakened to this for a long time. Sometimes I surprise myself. That was one of them. So there I was. I've been saying this at least for 3 years. And if I made it a meme, or whatever, I obviously had it in my mind. But people don't see that. They don't see themselves. This is the world today, people are acting like drunk monkeys, hooked on political news, smartphones, and the cult of personality. Can't see, can't peel away, don't know what's peeled a couple layers of the onion off, like these, Elon Musk's and certain people like that, or these talking heads on TV, these so-called experts that they parade in front of people, or who do these YouTube videos, and they, and they're worshipped, or they're paid attention to and documentarized, right? Because they're peeling off some layers and they're shedding some light, and and the monkey brain's going, wow, this guy's really smarter than I am. I gotta remember that and use that in a meme tomorrow. And I'm saying, I've been talking about this stuff for 25, 30 years. It's already happened. You're not having a eureka moment by anything you see on cable TV, network TV, social media, anywhere. This is about as real as it gets. This is the #1 world broadcast. This is the only place you're finding the truth. I'm the only person talking the truth. I mean, there's a couple other people in specific areas, guys like David Dubine, who are talking about Adapt 2030, who tell you the truth about what's really going on with the Earth and the cycles and how the Earth is cooling, or Ben Davidson at Suspicious Observers, who's talking seriously and going through papers and the facts, scientific and facts about the sun and magnetic fields. There are people like that doing that stuff. But, from a broad standpoint, the average person doesn't even see this. I just want to make sure that it's this is hard to see. But all right, I'm going to have to lower the do something here. Get my tools back. Okay. So this is, the Earth is responsible for our climate. And so this yellow signifies the Earth, and you can't see it here, but the imaginary, you could see that this is kind of, the Earth's kind of tilted, and on the imaginary, we call the imaginary axis. All right, that's how we have seasons. Okay, and then this thing moves, and then we have precession, it's called. So that's like the greater cycles. And so when the Earth is tilted, here's the sun. The northern hemisphere, it experiences warmer weather, right? This is climate, 101. Actually, this is grade school climate, meteorology or whatever. Okay, but the average person just doesn't understand that. Like, they see the sun, they know that it's hot in the daytime when the sun's out, and they know it's cold at night when the sun goes down. But then they say, oh, it's CO2 that makes the planet hot. CO2 is a greenhouse gas. Yeah, it is a greenhouse gas. They pump, why they call it a greenhouse gas? Because people who have greenhouses pump extra CO2 into the greenhouses so they could green it. That's why they call it a greenhouse. right? CO2 is a greenhouse gas. Yeah, it helps green things. And so they play around with these words and the glamour to mess with people's minds. But there are people out there that are trying to basically tell the truth, but people just don't want to hear it. This is another thing I was talking about. The suspicious observers. It's just the name of this guy's show. And here's another perfect example. So obviously this, on this is the sun. And the sun's coming here, and it's hard to tell exactly, but there's a globe right here will be the Earth. All right. This isn't an exact scale because the Earth is the Earth on the sun is a dot. A sun that size particularly would be almost a little bit bigger than a speck. But these waves you see are magnetic fields, and so the Earth has magnetic fields, and the sun has a greater magnetic field, and it's the Earth's magnetic field that protects us from cosmic rays. And in a greater standpoint, the sun also protects the Earth and the other planets in the solar system from cosmic rays and things. So our magnetic field protects us from the solar rays, the damaging rays, our atmosphere and our magnetic field. And likewise, the sun, in a greater sense, protects us from cosmic rays and other things that could cause all kinds of havoc. And it's these things that create climate and affect everything from earthquakes, which have been proven now, to volcanic activity, to what we just saw, the basic Arctic vortex, the jet stream, which is the jet stream should normally just be kind of just rolling along on the north and the south, but if it dips, then you have those crazy cold weather, experiences. And these are cyclical, and this stuff happens. But we're at a period right now where we have less here's an example of precession, what I was talking about. This is hard to see because it's a smaller graphic. One good thing about a TV, as opposed to putting this up, is that so the Earth, you can see my white little mouse here. This thing in the middle here, this reddish thing, is the Earth. And so every 25,000 years or so, there's this processional arc, they call it. And that's where the North Pole, so to speak, aligns itself. The Earth has like this ecliptic, and it's like a 23.4 degrees or something odd like that. And whether we face, Polaris or Vega over these 25,000 years, half of that is approximately like these 12,000 year cycles. And then there's these 400 year cycles. But all of these factors are the things that affect the planet. And, through the glamour, and them mesmerizing people, and the cult of personality, and politics as pop culture, and, everybody there with the black mirror and me precious little thing. I must hold me precious, keep it in my pocket, put it in my pocket so it gives me cancer, it's like, wake up, monkey brain, And what I was trying to say before, when depending on how your viewpoint, whether you think consciousness is the soul, or you have some metaphysical idea, a different idea through an NDE or astral projection or whatever you want to call it, that you have to wake up, you have to use your consciousness, because it's your consciousness that basically takes you a step above that, that reptilian, Homo erectus brain, right? That seems to have been programmed to somehow want to worship or follow a leader. See, that's the thing. And like I say, you have to be open to ideas. I can't pretend to say, that, somebody talks about Sumerians and, the Anunnaki using early humans as messing with our DNA. And so we would mine gold, people have all these, things they throw out there, or other various mythologies, the Vega, this idea. I mean, it's insane, if you get caught down these rabbit holes. And some of the stuff, there's astrotheology, people who study the Bible as, in that way. The strange coincidences, concurrences, within, religious texts and all that sort of thing. And things just pop up whenever they feel like it. But it seems clear to me, to whether it's some kind of randomized thing or whatever, or it's been programmed into us, on purpose through basically a indoctrination, a bombardment from the education system and the media, however this has occurred and got us to this point, the point we've been, say, in the last couple decades, where, we have this need to look up into these, be mesmerized, and have this cult of personality, and how we somehow replaced culture, or even pop culture. What was pop culture? Pop culture used to just be like Twiggy, used to be the mini skirt, used to be a fad, fashion, latest pop star. I mean, that used to be pop culture. That's why I call them pop stars, right? To where somehow pop culture became politicized. And so politics is the new pop culture. And people say, oh, they're still pop stars. What about such and such? And it's like, no, there is no pop culture, because in the past 20 years, it's been this, things haven't changed. I've gone through this before, and these videos get long and repetitive in some sense, but I just have to do it because you never know who's watching. And if they've missed something else, and they're not likely on a video I might have had before that lasted 2.5 hours, they're not likely to go and watch that for that long a time. It's a live broadcast. People tune in, tune out. They just happen to have it. I see the stats, and, the stats of people coming in and out, but like YouTube doesn't really give you honest stats for the general public, but you can tell by looking through analytics, how many, that you've got people coming on and off and staying watching for a half hour or an hour. So, like yesterday, I'm surprised, there's people that, will tune in and they'll watch for an hour or so, but the show went almost 2.5 hours long, so I don't expect somebody to watch this 2.5 hours. This is like flipping around, with a remote control, flipping around the TV, and you happen upon, check in with this guy for a little while, see what he's talking about. Was that a picture of an onion? Is the guy drinking a soda, burping or something? Let's see what he's talking about. I'm talking about the glamour. I'm talking about the idea of it, that people have to erase this idea of politics as pop culture, and that for the last 20 years, this country stagnated, and that's why it fell apart and why the empire fell. And when empires fall, they never come back. When Rome fell, you ended up with Italy. You know, some people think it's like, oh, it's the end of the world, the United States, it's got to come back. We got to have a cult of personality. 2022 elections, 2024, we got to save the country. Save it for what? It's already gone. The empire fell. Here's what's left. A bunch of states in North America. You know, the Europeans pegged it right. When I went to Europe, people would say, oh, you're from the States. Yeah, these are the states. And look around these states now. What have you got? You have governors that have become like authoritarians, right? You know, have taken all the power, right? So it used to be a United States, you know, and now it's disunited states, basically. And the country has irreconcilable differences on so many levels and sub-levels beyond those levels. And you know that in your heart of hearts, you know. I mean, monkey brain or not, you got to figure that. You got to see that that's reality. So I don't, you know, I don't get it when I hear people. I'm trying to, you know, be able to, trying to be more in the center, you know, on this thing without, but it's just hard. Sorry. But yeah, you know, it's not coming back. So, you know, like I said yesterday, I said, yeah, you know, you've got, you know, Rome fell, but you know, you still had Tuscany, nice place, right? You know, you still had all, you know, Naples, you know, you still have Rome for that matter as far as the city is concerned, and people and Italians. Same with, you know, Spain was this, you know, evil seafaring power, and Columbus and all the havoc he did in South America and Central America, whatever. And they fell, you know, and now Spain's just a country. But, you know, if you live on some little coastal region in, you know, southern Spain, you know, or Portugal or places like that, you know, I mean, they're no longer empires, and, you know, financially they're, you know, they're not doing a lot of these countries aren't doing too well. And but they've never been able, like Italy's never been able to have you know, they've changed governments so many times because there's no use, you know. When an empire falls, an empire falls. Egypt never came back. Look at Britain. You know, there's people in this country that still don't know that Independence Day is Independence Day from England. And that the Revolutionary War, you know, they don't even understand that it was against the king system. And there are people now that when they see that Markle princess, whatever, a B actress from a cable show, and they, you know, and they treat her like they treated, you know, Lady Di, Princess Di, or whatever. And they have no idea that this was a country that despised the king system and that whole nonsense, right? They don't even know that. Monkey brains, right? And it wasn't bad enough we defeated the British, all right? But then they came back in 1812 and they literally burned down Washington, the capital, and all that stuff. So you thought a bunch of weirdos that, you know, that broke into Capitol and danced around with horns on their head and, you know, did a few things, took some videos and posted some videos. Like they make that seem like, oh my God, you know, they attacked the Capitol. And look at the British did. And on Independence Day, instead of that, they're just like turn it into another weird holiday, or something, or have warped it into some other kind of thing. Like it has to do this, it was independence from the king system. It's independence from the World Economic Forum, right? So, when you have Independence Day, this is what this is what July 4th, this is what should be talked about. Not going to some graveyards and fireworks and stuff like that. Bombs bursting in air, the rockets' red glare. It was like the War of 1812. That was Britain attacking the U.S. again. Well, right now you've got the World Economic Forum attacking the U.S. Who cares about a bunch of slugs, goofballs, and freaks on the internet, or a handful of maniacs, that they're trying, the glamour and the cult of personality and politics as pop culture they're trying to create as if, oh, this is what you got to be focused on. See, that's their whole idea. Control the focus, right? I just wanted to put this up quickly, and I think you can get an idea here. This is the Pietà, Michelangelo. And obviously you can't see this marble, the shiny marble and the texture and the cloth and the detail on this thing. All right. But, when people talk about, we've lost fine art in that was the downfall of this country. And that started to happen about 60 years ago. All right. 50, 60 years ago, when we replaced, in other words, at one point, pop culture and fine art were considered two different things, right? Because culture, if you were cultured, let's think about this. In the classical sense of culture, that meant you were educated in, the fine arts, okay? And so fine arts were classical music, classical art, classical literature, classical architecture, these things. And you understood world history, and would have known what the Renaissance was and Renaissance artists and who the great masters that followed were, and even up to Picasso, and and that, I mean, you could say that, I guess, in a sense, once you had Warhol, there was a merging of what would be pop culture. Pop culture would have been Elvis Presley, but what happened was pop culture and and like Warhol, somehow at that particular period of time, if you want to look back at it, culture merged with pop culture. And so those that held on to culture, the fine arts, right? Like I said, the classical art, literature, and architecture and painting, sculpture, and what have you. That became, background for students of fine art and culture. And pop culture came to the fore. And it wasn't all that bad. I came up in the generation of pop culture, so it was it's like the Patty Duke show. I wish I could play. I played the theme song from hers in one of my earlier videos, and I got a copyright, thing. So I can't even play that. But, that was pop culture. Pop culture was TV shows, Saturday morning cartoons, comic books, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, all that kind of stuff. and then pop art, right? And that's what they called it, pop art. And so it was no longer, fine arts were, I just took the radio out of this room. I have, but I still sometimes listen to a classical radio station when I'm out gardening and stuff. And I find it very, soothing and, puts me in a really good mindset. But I also listen to, the music I, grew up with, and the music and other music at other times. Depends on what I'm doing. Happy hours. Like I said yesterday, it's like I'd love to have St. Patrick's Day's coming up in like 9 days. I'd love to be able to do a marathon broadcast playing Irish music and drinking Guinness on the air and do like a 5 or 6 hour crazy broadcast. But I can't, because these people, the Google people, the YouTube people, don't pay their royalties. And I don't know why in hell BMI and ASCAP and CSAP and the musicians, representatives, publishers, and producers and the artists aren't up in arms about that, right? Why can't you play music on a live broadcast? That means they're not paying the rights. When I used to do this in the 90s, I was ahead of my time before this YouTube existed. I was doing this. All right. Using technology, my own technology. My chair sunk down again. And I paid, because I was individually doing it. So I paid BMI, and, in those days, I think I said this before, if you paid BMI, then ASCAP would kind of say, okay, well, at least this, and, and I would report my songs list. Of course, nowadays, obviously through algorithms, they give you an instantaneous copyright thing, and they list all the, they list all the songs. So they know that. So it's so easy. They have that capability to instantly generate a list, send it to BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, whatever, and say, okay, here's the songs that are paid. So those artists get their percentage of the royalty money. And remember, this is a commercial entity where YouTube takes the lion's share of advertising revenue from various videos. I mean, I'm not monetized. I don't make any money on this. Like I said before, nobody's buying my stuff. I wish you'd buy my book and stuff, and buy something through Great Solar Stuff, not get me turn you on to something and then you go buy it on Amazon yourself. No, buy it through the link. So I get $1 or $2. Show some support for me and other people who do that. But they're not doing that. So they're not paying their fair share. They're ripping off the artists. I'm an artist. Hey, I'm a BMI, artist, writer, songwriter. I have songs out there. And so I should be able to I get strikes when I play my own songs. So, that's another thing that, people should be focused on. And that's definitely pop culture. But they get away with this stuff, big tech, So no one wants to they don't want to peel away that though from the onion down to the core to see what's going on, how this corporatocracy has put up the glamour over top of us all, and that they're in charge. They're running the show, and the politics of pop culture politics is nothing. They're just clowns. You've got a president who has dementia, right? Then you have another side that's like extreme, on their side, and you have, so it's over. And it's irreconcilable differences. You are never going to connect the MAGA crowd with what is clearly they call themselves the far left. You're never going. There's irreconcilable differences there. They're diametrically opposed to one another. And then within those groups, because if I'm a YouTuber, I don't have I got rid of my TV. So within those two groups, if you go down, there's also disagreement within those groups. So, you have the AOC on the far left, you have the Bernie Sanders AOCs, and then you have, Pelosi's, and you have, whatever Biden's trying to say, or his wife, whoever's in charge of that, and Harris. You've got all these on the left side. You've got all these differences. You've got irreconcilable differences on their side. All right. And then on the so-called right, whatever, the Trump party or whatever, within that, you have people who say, well, I'm definitely against the far left, but I'm more of a libertarian. So they want less government, and they want, they're this, that. They don't want get out of foreign wars, or, I mean, and it just keeps going down. Like I said in another video, it's like a flow chart that just has these squares, and then under each square, there's a line, and then there's 4 squares under there, and then you go there, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And the irreconcilable differences are just unbelievable. And so the empire's fallen. And it wasn't like it fell in the 2022 elections. No, this thing's fallen over the past 20 years. It's like, Rome didn't fall in a day. It's not one day. Egypt didn't just stop being, the dynastic period just didn't suddenly end. And everybody just moved out of, the Nile area or something like that. Spain didn't just one day say, okay, today we're no longer, this empire. Let's dismantle every boat, right? And right when after the Revolutionary War, when the U.S. Declared independence, that wasn't the end of England. Heck, they went on to create apartheid in South Africa. What do you think Gandhi was about? Getting the British out of India, right? And the crown still claims they control Canada and Australia. They're still involved in oppression. They're no empire. I mean, it's just an island now. But they've, So the point is, you have to, see through the glamour, peel away the onion layers, and it's clear to you. Unless you literally have some kind of monkey brain, some kind of reptilian brain, or no consciousness or no soul, so to speak. If you're religious, it's like I say this, there was a movie I saw once where they said there were no more, the soul people, it's no more souls, where people were actually they were just, biological units. And it's funny. And I look at that and I look at a lot of people, and when you can't talk or communicate with them, I often say that, that person is soulless, they're a biological android, just a functioning biological android. And you could even from a religious standpoint, believe in that, in other words, they were created. You could say God created man if you want to. And but you could say that those individuals, but there's no soul put into them. And they're soulless. And I like that because that's the best explanation, that I think everyone brought up in whatever your background is. The word soul means a lot of things, and then so that's it. So they have no conscience. They have no, they're just a their brain is just a bioelectric computer. They're androids. They're like, the like Zuckerberg, right? Looks like Data on Star Trek, right? So, I mean, that's all they are. And that's why they call them technocrats, and they're trying to merge man with machine because they believe in AI and all of that. And I don't know if I have anything along those lines here. I'll try to wind this thing down. Forgive me. If you ever want to go down a rabbit hole, I just put this up for the sake of it. This is a guy named Manly Hall. And he's got some interesting, see if I darken that up a little bit. I don't know how these things, well, that's not going to work. But anyway, this is the guy, real character. Manly P. Hall. And they've got a ton of lectures from this guy. These are these people that you find through the rabbit hole. Guys like Manly P. Hall, guys like Alan Watts, they're kind of, philosophers, maybe pop culture philosophers that, dating back to the 50, 60 years ago. And if you're going to go down a rabbit hole, listen to these guys, because the thing is, there's no glamour there. They're like calling it like it is. And whether you agree with everything these people say, and I don't particularly agree with everything, like especially Manly Hall, he's all over the place. But at least it's another way of looking at life, and it's philosophy. Instead of this world we live in right now, which is like no fun allowed here, right? And these people in charge, they put us in this position where they call, it's like the other word they use, social media, social distancing, right? Another word that has meaning, or should have meaning, of like being social, getting together, literally getting together, not in a Zoom chat, not on Twitter or Facebook. Excuse me. But rather being social, but they use it. It's like green, was nothing to do with greening the planet. In fact, if they have their way, the planet will become, would be totally not green, right? They're not addressing, it'll become this cold, frigid place with food shortages and no heat, no heavy equipment, no ability for society to even operate. Society would come to a crashing halt. It's like yesterday I had on there, what's their end game? Why are they pushing these lies? Why are they pushing these lies? Because literally, if the new Green Deal is, would go through its natural, would be seen through to its fruition, you basically would bring the entire planet to a halt, right? And you have to say, hey, what's their goal? And yesterday, the conclusion yesterday was depopulation. They want to kill off half the planet. There's no other like logical, explanation for that. Now here's a fun one. You can see this. You see, those are the pyramids in the background. All right. And if you can see my mouse, it's hard to see the mouse. It's a little white thing there. This is a Pizza Hut in, with the imagine going to a pizza. This would be like the patio in a Pizza Hut, overlooking the pyramids, right? I mean, what a view, right? To sit there and just I always thought this is one of the coolest pictures in the world. I don't know who took that picture. I didn't take that picture. But, just the idea of expanding your mind. And of course, there's the overview of the pyramids where they mimic Orion's belt. And, that whole idea of, that's another rabbit hole to go down. Like I say, I used to do this stuff like in the 90s. I had, the longest running lounge show, it was called. And I eventually stopped playing lounge music so much and got into these kinds of discussions. And I don't know if we can up the shadows on this at all. But you can see that's me on the left. And there would be there's a microphone. You can see the mouse at all or not. And that's me doing my show in the 90s. This is like this old slideshows in the 60s, and people used to have the clicker when they would come back from a trip. But I think everyone's pretty much familiar with this. This classic painting. But this is what the state of, this is what the glamour and pop culture, the cult of personality is doing to the average person. This is what the World Economic Forum, is doing to children and to adults. This is what the World Health Organization is doing. This is what the politicians, the cable media, the network media, the newspapers. This is the state of mind of, I would say, the majority of people in this country, probably in Europe, are. Why Western civilization fell. Because Western civilization as a whole has fallen already. And it's just the U.S. is just starting to sink in that the U.S. is just basically becoming a fragmented group of states with authoritarian governors and a central government which really isn't a government per se, but a corporatocracy. And they've got through all their various bogeymen that they've been resurrecting since back in 9/11. This is the state of people in pure fear, right, of these bogeymen. And, this is horrible, and shocking. It should be shocking to you. And if you're one of those people, if that's how you're living, suicides are like way up in all age groups. Addiction to like real ridiculous drugs, opiates, type of drugs, the fentanyl, heroin type of drugs, and then the overdoses from them, way up. And of course, Afghanistan, is the number one producer of opiates. Now, we could have dropped one of those Moabs. They call it the mother of all bombs. Why didn't they drop one of those on the opium fields and just end it? Well, Big Pharma didn't want that to happen, right? And the drug trade, the drug cartels that are closely linked and finance things like the World Economic Forum and the Davos set and the Communist Chinese. Where do you think they get their money from? See, that's another deep, dark secret. The hell, the CIA was busted years and years and years ago with a drug deal, out in California. the guy who exposed it ended up dying in poverty and mysteriously in a mobile home. He was that's another interesting, sad, tragic story. But fear, it's crazy, what they've done to people.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Yeah, it's worth listening
The
to.
only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
But, could we get that point across to people? Are people too far gone to realize that? Is this you? Is this a family member of yours? Is this the future? Is this our children's future? So you got to come to grips with the fact that we're living in in dystopia, and that people are hanging on to something that no longer exists. There's hope. Oh, we're going to change this in the 2022 elections. Hey, they've already just passed a bill that basically guarantees that no election will ever be open and free. All right. It's not going to change. There's no messiah, in politics that's going to do anything. Like I said before, the politicians are the lowest rung. Once you move into a corporatocracy, nothing gets done that the corporatocracy, the Davos set, the World Economic Forum people don't want. But yeah, this is shocking. This is us today. This is the country. This is more than half the country. They've got people, right? And that's, those who've stayed on long enough, to see this, that's good. I don't know if this thing is possible, like, to be seen. Oh, I see. It doesn't play animations. Anyway, it's Tony Caravan live in neon, but in this particular program, it won't show it it's an animation I made years ago. But I hope that's giving you like some sort of shock, particularly that last image, because until you wake up to reality, you're not going to survive, the days ahead. You're simply not going to survive the days ahead. And it'd be really nice if people would support this show, this morning show, because nobody else is really talking about this stuff in depth. And you can go to my various websites that I have out there, and you could listen to my songs. You could buy my shirts. And I highly recommend it. It not only will help support this broadcast and allow me the ability to improve it, but, like I say, I've been at this for a long time. So if you listen to a song like Virtual Cage, all right, which you could just go to TonyCaravanLive.com and just play it right there for free, or play some of my other beat poetry songs. Or you could get my, these classic shirts that I have. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And that's the takeaway. And that's what this show's really all about, bringing you that. Peeling away, really peeling away the onion so that you see, so you no longer have the glamour. It's like being woken up, shaken out of that trance, being mesmerized by the glamour. And you don't know what you don't know. And like this shirt says here, which there's my book. Buy the book. Codex. It's not a big read. It's not a thick book. It's available on Amazon.com or through my website. And like I've showed before, look at the quality of this shirt. Everything you know is wrong. This just costs the same price as any t-shirt. I mean, it's less than $20 or something like that. I don't know. I didn't pay. I think I paid about $17 for it or something. I don't know what the price is right now. But tune in here, grab a mug, grab a shirt, get a book, stay tuned. Get one of these things on my Great Solar site. And the next time there's a power failure, a storm, or if we end up with the grid down situation, it'll give you a fighting chance to survive for a while, And it's like, I'm not talking about being a prepper or anything like that, to be extreme. But there's nothing wrong with being prepared a little bit. And like I say, there's nothing wrong with having a solar panel or two or some solar power on your individual house. That gives you freedom from the corporatocracy. But for them to give this delusional, idealistic, utopian dream that these bird-killing windmills that are basically falling apart and all over the country already, the first group that they built are pretty much they're like obelisks in ancient Egypt or, in Greece, columns in Greece. They're just sitting there. Nobody's going to repair them. And without heavy equipment and cranes that run on fossil fuels, carbon-based fuels, there's no way of repairing those things, right? They never tell you that. And they have these solar farms that are basically reflectors, glass reflectors, and these glass, and they're high maintenance, keeping the glass is breaking. It's, they're falling into disrepair, right? And Carrie says, oh, we're going to take welders and guys who build pipelines, lifelong, 40, 50-year-old men with skills, logistics and using heavy equipment and welding and all that sort of stuff. Oh, we're going to make them maintenance workers for windmills and solar panels that just aren't going to produce, right, enough energy. You can look out at just practically go to greatsolarstuff.com, buy something. All right. When you get your $1,400 check. All right. But you can look at even the northern countries, that have insulated, Texas, we saw a problem where they never properly insulated their windmills. Okay. So the windmills just froze up, It happened in Germany too, though. And Germans should have known better. They had some problems. So they were even probably somewhat insulated. But, they have windmills in Canada and places like that. And yeah, there are ways of insulating them and stuff. But you can look at any of these countries, any of these places that have done this, and they're still reliant, apart from France, which is reliant on, mostly nuclear power. All right. So, they don't really use their fossil fuels aren't their thing, their wheelhouse. But, apart from, that as an alternative, which I don't see why you need an alternative. The U.S. is energy independent. And like I say, we've cleaned up our act over the past 50, 60 years. Just these people are not telling that. They've got the glamour up and mesmerized everybody and are just lying. They're just lying to you, you know? And they peel away a few layers of the onion and they make it seem like, oh, we're doing something. An investigative journalist today peels off the first 2 layers of an onion and gets a Pulitzer Prize. All right. But the onion still has about 17 more layers. And a guy like me is taking you down to that little part in the middle that almost looks like the seed. All right. So no matter how much you insulate, how much you build, and how much effort you put into this stuff, it's good for individuals. The solar panels are good for an individual, but they don't want that. See, they want every central control. That's what they're building. They want a totalitarian state. They want the corporatocracy. They actually want everybody to live in the cities, in cubicles, like I said before, in the days of when the government was in charge, the government's no longer in charge. The corporatocracy has been sneaking in when K Street, and the lobbyists took over Congress, many, many decades ago and got control of the government and the bureaucracies. The military industrial complex, runs the Pentagon. All right. Our soldiers are basically pawns for corporate interests, right? People that don't care about their lives, right? They just care about, putting them in harm's way so that they could replace that Humvee and the missiles and the ammunition and the drones and everything else. Right. They're just in it for the money. And so they use patriotic people, who've been sold a false bill of goods and are out there trying to protect freedom. And then they come home and they find out that they don't have freedom. Right. Freedom's been taken away and the country's been sold out to the corporatocracy, and that they lost limbs and brothers in arms over some company wanting to just increase its profit quarter over quarter, year over year. Yeah, that's how bad and pathetic it is. And the suicide rate among returning soldiers is still high and unacceptable for the sacrifice that our fellow brothers have made, right? So, and sisters. So yeah, I'll be here every day to peel away the onion. The topics will go in different directions. Sometimes it's a slow start. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it's entertaining. Today, I just feel it's a downer in a sense that because, I see so many lies and so many people that believe these lies that it's disheartening. And, in many ways it's depressing. But on a higher note, remember, like I always say, you have your 5 senses. The world is still a beautiful place. You still have the ability to experience, find the finer things in life. You can still look at, at the beauty of nature that surrounds you. All right. You can experience that. We've got my doppelganger on the screen, but we don't have to have that there. I can take this back down to, oh, wait a second. Oh, actually, I don't want to really do that, but I could just turn this off. But yeah, you have yourself, you have your senses, you have your consciousness. All right. You don't have to look through this glamour, look through this being mesmerized, being hypnotized, and accept reality as it is. I mean, you can't sit there and lie to yourself that the United States is still, an empire. All right. You can't. You know that we're disunited. You know that there's irreconcilable differences. That's no difference that if you've been divorced, as if thinking, oh, your cheating wife or your cheating husband or whatever, that lied to you, deceived you for 5 years or something like that, that you're going to get back together with them, right? Somebody, that emptied your bank account and ran off with somebody. I mean, that's, we're talking, or that, got caught up in some crazy criminal activities, became, addicted to certain drugs, doing whatever. When like I say, when the lawyer puts in for divorce and it's irreconcilable differences, that means, no amount of going to see a therapist or counselor, marriage counselor, or anything like that is going to work. That's irreconcilable differences. And that's what we're seeing in the United States today. But the media is pretending. See, the media makes a buck. They're the corporatocracy. Everyone you see on the media are multimillionaires. Everyone who owns the media, they're the corporatocracy. They're billionaires, multi-billionaires. The commercials you see on there, like I say, they're used car salesmen, but they're just in there to sell commercials, to sell advertising. So they have no skin in the game. They don't care about anything. They're playing you. It doesn't matter which station it is. If you think, oh, these stations are on my side, that station's on the other side. No, they're all just selling advertising. Like I say, they're used car sales people. And the sooner you grasp that and get that, the better. Again, just because America's fallen, the United States of America has become disunited, and it's become a series of authoritarian governor states, some which you might like, some which you might not like. Well, that's the way it is. All right. Rome fell, you still had Italy. So, if you want to live in a certain lifestyle, you're going to have to go to a geographical part of North America that that you can live out your life happy and that you like, whether it's the climate, the community, the type of governance they have, the tax rate, whatever that may be. That's what you have to do. Well, you don't have to do anything. You're a free individual person. You do whatever you feel like. That's the way I look at it. Don't be influenced by anyone, and certainly don't take me. I'm not trying to give you advice. I'm just calling it like it is. I'm trying to peel away the onion and expose this stuff. So, you do whatever you want to. You want to live in New York City. You want to live in the middle of, some city where there's riots every night or something like that, or high crime. That floats your boat. Go ahead and do it. I got away from it. I'm just telling you, I'm giving you, anecdotes and pointing out things that I have learned over the years. So just remember that you are in control of your life, and you can make those decisions on your own anytime you want to. It's not you can't turn it on and off like a light switch or snap of a finger and suddenly just pick up and go. Some people do that. I mean, but maybe a younger person can do that. But the older you get, the harder it is. Take some planning. You have to think it out, look, research. But the idea is that, hard times are ahead. The United States is over as we've known it. The political system no longer exists. Politicians are no longer in charge. The corporatocracy in charge, and people that believe, forget about the deep state too. The deep state is, the corporatocracy is going after the deep state too. They're the next ones on the chopping block by the corporatocracy, just like the Congress and the presidency and the courts, Supreme Court and the federal courts and even the local courts. They've become insignificant and irrelevant because they're all controlled. They say that they like to say, oh, it's all politicized, but the word politicized is another one of those fake words. It's trying to hold on to the idea that there still is a political system or a governance. All right. A government. No, there's only a corporatocracy. The courts answer to the corporatocracy. All right. The government, the corporatocracy pulls the strings. And, all three branches of what was the former government of the former United States, they're marionettes of the corporatocracy. It's the deep state that is next on the chopping block, because the corporatocracy and the deep state are all becoming marionettes to the puppeteers at the top. Big tech, who has big data, big pharma, big ag, the military industrial complex. All right. And of course, these crazy people, this World Economic Forum Davos set, that are pushing, this global UN, Brussels, totalitarian rule, neo-feudalism, and, and the insanity, dystopian future that actually is no longer a future. It's like already happening. And once you open your mind to that, but realize that you still have five senses and you can still live and experience life in this world, you just have to put yourself and your family or friends, or if you're by yourself, into a position where you can live happy and a full and happy life. See, I don't believe, like, these preppers and these people moving out into the woods and having composting toilets, to me, I laugh at them. No, I'm saying you to do what I did. I bought a house for $15,000 in a neighborhood in an area that's at the outskirts of town, but it's still in a neighborhood. It's not out of town. There's people, further out than I am. I mean, I have everything. I have a yard. I grow vegetables and stuff like that. But, I still have all the amenities. I have, running water and a toilet. I actually have a 1.5 bath house. So no, I say, when Rome fell, there were probably people that still lived well through the rest of their lives. And as time progressed, those that had the brains were using their consciousness, probably thrived. Just like other empires that rose and fell. And I'm saying that you can still live without the fact that the government's that the United States is no longer empire and the president is no longer the leader of the free world, because the free world doesn't exist. Western civilization fell first, and we fell second. But that doesn't mean, what does that really mean? Right? It doesn't mean anything to you. Not if you get out of it. All right. You limit your exposure, like they say in financial circles. Limit your exposure to the corporatocracy. Scale down your life. If you're living in a $250,000 home or something, cut your expenses by a quarter by moving into a home that's only or fifth, even by moving into a home pay 1/5 of what you're paying now. Get a $50,000 home on the outskirts of town, or in an area that's, that where you're not paying a premium price just for that geographical location, which usually means you have to get in a car and do everything anyway. Whereas opposed to like a place like mine, not only did I cut my costs way down to next to nothing, but I could actually walk to a grocery store, a convenience store, a restaurant, pizza shop, a bar. There's a doctor next door, a hardware store across the street. There's places like this that exist all over America. All right. In communities all over America. Every place from like boroughs to cities, secondary, like I say, top 100 cities. Forget about the top 10, top 20, even the top 40 markets. Get out of those areas. Those are the strongholds of the corporatocracy, of the people that are just, are going to, where you're just cattle on their tax farm and consumer farms. All right. But take it from a guy who was in media, like we used to talk even about the top 200 markets. There's like 150 other, regions that you can move to that are, that have all the amenities, culture, schools, churches, whatever it is that, you are priorities in your life to give you a full life, that are, where you still have that 660 degree, immersion in the real world, not some virtual world. Break free of the glamour, break free of the hypnoticness, break free of the mind control of social media, break free of the politics of pop culture, break free of the cult of personality, and use your consciousness, and find out that there's a real world there. It never existed. And all these things, social media and all these things, they're all brand new, relatively speaking, from a timeline, 10, 12 years ago. The average person didn't even have a smartphone, 10 or 15 years ago. What wasn't on social media 10 or 15 years ago. Right? So, and life was fine. Life was fine. In fact, in many ways, arguably, it was better. So they're nothing but, it's the glamour, man. They're messing with you with these things, messing with your head, giving you dopamine hits, getting you caught up in the trap. When I left, all right, social media, I didn't have any desire to go back. I just turned it off. Right. But I was into it every day. I was spending an hour or two, doing stuff. I was caught up in it. And so that's why I'm sharing this with you right now. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I wish I was, people would support my channel. Good morning. But that doesn't matter. I still wish you all a good morning. It's Monday, the beginning of the week, and I hope you have a great week ahead. The weather's going to be nice in most parts of these former United States, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we're still alive. We still the planet's still here. The street's still here. Your house, your life, your people are still here. All right? So what does it mean? These words. They use words, spelling, right? They're casting a spell on people by using words. Don't get caught up in that nonsense. Forget the glamour, all right? I'll talk to you soon.